Latice, welcome back to Success with Soul.
Hey, Kate. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm super pumped. You were on an episode technically before doing a little round table with us, but this is the first time we're now like live chatting, and I'm super pumped to have this conversation. I know it's going to be amazing.
It will. I'm so excited to be back.
And you are now one of several HTH members who have come on the show now. So HTH stands for High Ticket Hybrid, which is Mariah Kaz's program where I met Latice originally. And she taught actually a class at Mariah's virtual conference that was bomb. And I knew afterwards, I'm like, I got to invite this girl on the show. So I'm glad you're finally here many months later.
Yes, I'm so excited. After one reschedule, we're here.
Yes, only one. That was pretty good.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. Life happens. And I'm like, but I have to be on Kate's podcast again.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we're glad you're here. And so tell everybody, you have a very amazing story. And as you describe it, of hitting rock bottom, and things have really, sorry, there's my dog. Things have really turned around. So tell us that story.
Yeah. So do you want like the origin story or like my stepping into being an online coach story, or do you want all of it?
I want all of it. It's really
All of it.
and good. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So real quick backstory, y'all. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Shout out to the Midwest. And I grew up we grew up like low middle class. Nothing was like out of the ordinary growing up, but I was adopted as a child. So we always knew that. Three of my other siblings are adopted as well. And so I always knew that. And I always kind of felt like a little bit different just because of that backstory, but I never let it like hold me back in life. So growing up, I had an open adoption, knew I was adopted, went through life. My dad did pass away when I was about 10 years old. So that kind of left me with a lot of emptiness growing up as a child, trying to find my way. And I think I turned a lot of that pain and a lot of that emptiness into pouring into other people and into leadership and things like that, which I'll get into in just a second. But growing up, things outside of that were pretty normal. So back in 2015, I graduated from college. The first one in my family, got my bachelor's degree in human resource management. And then I set forth on corporate track, like we're all told to, right? We're all told to go get that
girl.
Right. Go get that good corporate job, get your degree. And I thought I was really doing a lot, right? I was like, I'm breaking generational curses. I'm going to set my family up. Life's going to be great. At the time I was working for Target as an executive team leader. I'd worked for Target since I was like 16. So Target for me was a really safe space. I got a lot of leadership development, honestly, one of the best companies I've ever worked for, but I met a guy and I moved to Denver. So I ended up leaving Target, moved to Denver for a relationship that didn't work out. Highly don't recommend any of y'all doing that. But we live and learn, right? I was young. I was only 22 years old at the time. So went and worked for another company, did some more HR stuff, and then was like, I want to do more HR at a higher level, got another position as a regional HR. And I kind of was at a point where I had all these accolades so quickly. I mean, I was 24 making six figures in my corporate job, had the company car, the travel, all of that. But there was just like this empty spot in my heart. And a lot of it, I look back at, seeing my dad pass away so young. I know he didn't get to accomplish everything that he wanted to, just based off of just like pure fact. Like I know he didn't get to do everything he wanted. So when I look back at when I was about 24, 25 years old, sitting in my big corporate office, I just was like, there has like got to be more to life than this. Like I loved serving people. I loved leading. I loved all of those things, but I knew that sitting behind four walls was not going to give me the fulfillment the rest of my life that I thought. So in 2018, in September 2018, I quit my corporate job with $15,000 in the bank. And I was like, I know that's not a lot when you're living on your own and like doing all the things, but I was like, I'm going to figure this out. At that point, I had rental car business. I know people are like, that's so odd, but it's like kind of like Airbnb for cars. So I had like a bunch of cars that I was like renting out. So I had income coming in. I had that business as an LLC. I really was like, I'm such an awesome person. I have a whole business. And so I ended up quitting that corporate job September 2018.
And did
And
you have this rental car business during your corporate
I
job?
did.
Okay.
Yeah, I started it in 2017 because I was like, I kind of skipped over a little bit, but I got pretty sick. Like, so, and I was on bed rest for like a month, and then I was out of work for 3 months, just for like mental health. And then also I was so stressed out, I had a stomach ulcer. So it was like, I just had to take my doctor said, you need to take the time off. So thankfully my company paid for me to be out. But I was smart and used that time to start a business at that point in 2017. So that's also kind of what contributed to me being able to leave my corporate job. So like quickly I left, like I said, I got that job and then left within 9 months. So fast forward to 2019, I had my rental car business. I also had a small like e-com business on the side because I at this point was just like dabbling. I was like, I want to figure out how to make money. I love making money. Let me figure it out. But quickly I realized in February 2019, I went to this conference, an entrepreneur conference, for like rental car hosts. And I was just like, this is not light up my cup. Like it's fun, but like at 30 years old, do I want to be renting out cars? Like when I'm like thinking about starting a family? Probably not. So I had a business coach at the time, and she was like, you've got to choose one. Like you can't be doing your e-com, you can't be doing your cars and trying to be a full-time coach. It just doesn't work that way. So ultimately what I did was I got rid of those businesses, liquidated all my inventory, and I put my head down and got to work. And it was really, really difficult. Remember, I left that job with 15K. I was out of money. Rent was coming due. So I acted pretty quick. I got out of my really expensive apartment, got it subletted, and downsized my entire life, to rebuild my life essentially. And I didn't have a big support system. I'm not super close with my family. I don't have, I didn't have a partner at the time. And it was just me like navigating life. And it's not that I'm trying to gloss over all the hard things, but it was a really hard moment in my life when I had to go all in on one thing because I was half in here, half in there. And we all know that when we're splitting our energy and our focus on multiple different things, I mean, nothing's actually getting paid full attention to. So I had to like let it all go. So it was a pretty scary moment. But 2019 is a year that really I stepped into who I am today. So that's a little bit of my story and kind of how I ended up, stepping into coaching full time. So it looks like you have a question. So
Yeah, well,
like,
so many questions.
yeah,
Well, first tell people like, where are you today? Because I
yeah,
think what's
absolutely.
so powerful too is seeing people can come up with excuses for why they can't start their business now. They don't have the money. They can't do this. They can't, they're not willing to make certain sacrifices. And you're such a good example of like, you don't need anything except yourself and the drive and determination to do it. And so share kind of where you are now, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so powerful because so many people are willing to make excuses, and we all have excuses. That's one thing that we all have in common. I say we have excuses, we have fear, we have death, and we have taxes. Like those are the four things that we all have in common. And when I look at 2019 as a pivotal point, like my mentor at the time was really that driving factor. But she could tell me all day long what to do, but I had to take the action. So for me, I didn't have anybody to rely on. I really had to put my head down if I wanted to be above water. So like I said, I had to downsize my entire lifestyle, a lifestyle that I had been used to. I had to get humbled real quick, downsize my entire life. And I got to work, right? I worked on different frameworks. I worked on who I wanted to serve. I worked on like really anchoring in on the problem that I solve. And originally I started working with people that wanted to create a side hustle because I had did that so well. And that was really great. But as I navigated and pivoted, I found that I really loved working with higher level people. I'm not saying that those people weren't higher level, but like they were at a point where they wanted to do higher level things beyond just a side hustle. So that's when I pivoted into working with online coaches specifically because coaches in my eyes are leaders. So I pivoted, and fast forward, I launched a high ticket offer in May of 2019, got my first high ticket client about a month and a half later, and was doing one-to-one work and was like, I was loving it, but I was starting to get that burnt out feeling again, like I had in corporate. So in December 2019, I launched an evergreen high ticket group coaching program, and I've been running that ever since. So it took a lot of trial and error, a lot of long nights, but here we are today. So we have a $500,000 business at this point, and in 2021 we'll be hitting 7 figures. So yeah, my first year I made 30K. 2020 we did 300K in cash, and then this year we'll be hitting 1 million, and I'm pretty 100% sure on that. So yeah, the growth has been really quick.
Really quick, which I think is a good reminder, because I mean, I think entrepreneurship is a marathon. And so I don't like giving people the idea that like
Yeah,
you can, build $1 million business overnight. And I think, but I know that's not what you're saying. But I think it is also really powerful to have examples of like, it doesn't have to take years and years before you start making any money.
right.
Basically, after a year of being in business, you are already in the 6 figures.
Mhm.
Um, but it didn't start that way. Like I love the story of, okay, it was 30,000 your first year. And a lot of people that might be like, oh my God, I made 30,000 in my first year and that feels amazing. But then for other people, they might be like, I can't do this anymore. I can't justify, I think so many people give up in that first year because the first year isn't what they wanted, like long term. And it's like, you
Yeah.
just got to get past that and keep going if you really want this.
Absolutely. And I'm never a component of telling people they can build it overnight, but I do think that it can happen quickly in a sense of like compared to like what a brick and mortar business typically takes, anywhere from 3 to 5 years to start turning a profit. Where the beauty of online business is that our expenses can be so low, and like we have those minimal expenses. So you can profit and really make a full-time income pretty quickly. And it also just depends on like your circumstances. Like I always like to caveat this, like I didn't have a family, I didn't have kids. So I was able to really pour, a lot of my life into my business. I always like to set that expectation too, that I was a single woman with no children that was able to do this, which is probably a big piece of why I grew so quickly. So I just like to throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good context. And also, different people respond to money in different ways. It sounds like for you, knowing that you had $15,000 in your bank account, like really lit a fire under your ass of like, I got to get this thing going because
Yeah.
it's only me and I got to do this. And, some other people might feel like that fear is so paralyzing, but it sounds like for you, it was really motivating.
Absolutely. And I think too, I talk to my clients about this a lot. Like some of our clients that are in a spot where they're coming up on their year inside of our program and haven't quite gotten the results that they want, I ask them to be really honest with themselves about like, have you really put in 100% effort into your business? So it was a constant self check for me. Am I putting in the 100% that I know that I can? And every day is not going to be 100%. Like for me, yesterday was like 5%, right? A real life example. But the days that I can lay my head down and say I did all that I could do, I know that that's all that I could do too. So
Yeah.
it's really like self-regulating through all of that and recognizing that every day is not going to be an amazing day, but the more days that you can wake up and really focus on your vision, that's what's going to allow you to keep on going. Because that first year was really difficult, but I didn't have a choice. I did not have a choice but to make it happen for myself, and I did. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the story.
Yeah. I love it so much. So what are some of the other money blocks that you had to overcome during this time?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So for me, it was a lot of worthiness around money. It was a lot of the story that I'm not good at money. Because yeah, I had this 6 figure job, but I also had $50,000 in student loans. So I was like trying to pay off student loans, and I have this other complex where I feel like I need to give all my money away because I'm being so blessed that I even today I still struggle with like having to like help people and give all my money away, which is something that I want to do. But it's kind of funny. I was talking to my financial planner a couple of weeks ago. He's like, Latisse, like you have to take care of your 10-year retirement vision first before you can take care of everybody else. And it's so true. And a lot of the things that I struggled with back then and still even today that I'm working on every day is the worthiness, the having to give it all away, because that's what society says. If a woman makes a lot of money, she needs to give it away and be this philanthropist and like do all these great things. When in reality, like that's not the case. We don't have to give all our money away. We are worthy as we are today, as we will be tomorrow, as we will be next week. And for me, it was, I never really had an adult in my life that was quote unquote good with money. So I never saw that example. So for me, it was a lot of putting myself into spaces where people were 6-figure and 7-figure entrepreneurs, even when I wasn't, because it was really uncomfortable being like, wow, I have like $500 in my bank account, right? When I was really growing my business, and these people are sitting here spending $500 on a dinner. So for me, it was putting myself in the spaces that normally I probably wouldn't have, but getting comfortable talking about money. I think a lot of times, especially as a Black woman, we don't talk about money. Like a lot of us don't, just because it's a cultural thing. It's like, we don't talk about what's going on in the house. We don't talk about our relationships. We don't talk about our money. We hush, hush. And that is a very damaging context for all of us. So for me, it was just starting that conversation of money and reading books about money and talking to people about money and getting comfortable with it.
Yeah. Okay. Really good. I think there's something really interesting too about, there's that quote or expression that's like you are the 4 people you spend the most time with, or something to that effect. Probably butchered it, but I think that's what you're saying, is like being around people who had a lot of money, who had successful businesses. That was part of how you overcame your own money blocks. So like, how did you get in the room where it was happening?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So so my whole business is based off of like connection and conversations, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, but another piece of the story is when I was transitioning out of my old businesses and transitioning into coaching full time, I ended up, like I said, I had to downsize my life. So part of that was getting out of a high cost of living area. So I left Denver and moved to Phoenix, which like was a drastic, was able to really set me up nicely. So I used that as a lever. I changed my environment. And then also I saw other entrepreneurs just on social media, Instagram, Facebook, that appeared to be killing it, which they were in real life after I met them. And I just said, I reached out and said, hey, I'm moving to Phoenix, Scottsdale area, like would love to connect. Like, I'm not here to like get anything from you. I just truly want to connect and learn more about you. And I did that with a lot of different people, plugged into different networks on Facebook, and was able to kind of put myself in the room that way. And it was very brave and vulnerable of me, but I highly recommend it because it allowed me to see the light, essentially.
Yeah. And one of the things that I am excited to chat with you about is this idea of like women building wealth. What does getting more money in the hands of women mean to you? Why is this, important, and how does it kind of motivate and drive you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think we need to ask this question more. For me, building wealth, it's not only about like the material things. Like, I think material things are great. I'm not a super materialistic person myself, but if you want to go buy a fancy car and a fancy condo, go for it, right? I'll get there. We'll get there one day. But when I think about building wealth, it really is a few things. It's setting up your family for success for the long term. When I stepped into college, I didn't have a mom or dad that could pay for my college, right? So I had to take out all these monstrous loans just to make it through and get a degree. And thankfully I had a job waiting for me, but a lot of people don't. So for me, it's not just about today, but it's about the next generation. So setting my family up. So if my kids want to go to college or trade school or whatever they want to do or travel, we got it. Also being able to take my family and friends out for a nice dinner and be like, I got it. Being able to not rely on like the goal is not to rely on my business income in the next 5 years. So it's really setting up not only me, but my future family. So we don't have to struggle anymore, because when we look at it, I don't know the exact stats, but when we look at a Black family's net worth compared to a white family's net worth, it's vastly different. So for me, it's about breaking that generational curse. So we can start setting up our Black youth, my Black family, for the wealth that other people get to experience. So it's a movement for me, and wealth gives you more options and gives you more choices. I was at a conference a couple years ago, and Chris Harder spoke, and he talked about having more 10 out of 10 moments. And I had never heard anybody say it like that. And the example he gave was, when we talk about wealth, was how will it feel for your child if they want to go to Disney World? They don't understand money, right? They don't understand at 5 years old. They don't understand how money works. So they just think that they see something, they get it. How would it feel for you to have to tell your child, we can't afford Disney World? And that's going to start their money stories and their money blocks as a child. So for me, that really stung home, because although I don't have kids yet, but I don't ever want to have to tell my kid that we can't afford something, when I know in every ounce of my power, I have the possibility to change that. So for me, it's about having more choices, more 10 out of 10 moments. And while money doesn't solve everything, it surely makes things a lot easier. So that's really my mission for women, especially.
So powerful. And I'm curious, like, how does the work you do in your coaching business, how does that, further this movement? How is it a part of it?
Yeah. So for me, business has been the pathway to that freedom and flexibility. I think too, we have this notion that in order to make a lot of money, you have to work really hard, especially women. And that's like not the case. You're going to work efficiently, but you don't have to work so hard where you're burning yourself out. When I look back at my 6-figure corporate job, I was working 50, 60 hours a week and I was exhausted. I had no time for friends, no time for myself. Self-care was non-existent, but I had this fancy paycheck, which barely really covered the bills. Ultimately, living in Colorado, it was really expensive to live there as a single woman. So for me, when I think about the work that I do inside of my business, it's a trickle down effect, because business allows you so many options. You don't have an income cap typically, right, on your business, especially online. So for me, it's not only about creating wealth, it's also about creating thought leaders, and it's about changing the world. So for me, having wealth allows you to make changes, policy changes. Like, it allows you to speak to people in places that you normally wouldn't be able to speak to if you weren't wealthy. So it opens up that conversation, and it also, again, just sets your family and yourself up for success. So having an online business, specifically working with coaches, because I just have a passion for working with leaders, I can see the trickle down effect, because a lot of my clients, I mean, they're working with other clients and then telling their stories and impacting them. So it's really this trickle down effect of creating wealth for generations to come. So that's why for me, that's been the vehicle of delivery to be able to help women create wealth.
And having that why that's so much more than just like, I want money so that, I can pay my bills and have a certain lifestyle. Like, of course, that's everybody's kind of like basic motivation for why
Yeah.
we all have jobs at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I found that when I really was able to identify my why, that went beyond that went so much deeper than that. And for me, it's very similar, but it's, a lot about like doing my small part to dismantle the patriarchy and other systems of
Yes.
oppression and have more equity and inclusion for all. And that by empowering women to create these businesses and create their own wealth, like that is the first step to doing that.
Mhm.
And it makes it so much more fun to show up at work when you really have that next layer of like, this is why I'm doing this.
Absolutely, because ultimately, like, we get to make choices that allow us to take different actions that ultimately allow different results. And if we're going to change the world, it starts with getting more money into the hands of women. So I
Yeah.
think it's the crucial next step. So we no longer have to rely on a man or a partner or a spouse or the government to provide for us. Like, we want a comfortable life. And I even tell people, like, even if you just want enough to live a comfortable life, that's enough. But ultimately, like, as you continue to grow and scale, like, that's not going to be, like you said, that why is not going to hold you forever. It's got to be bigger than ourselves. So that's really my why and my mission, and why I choose this vehicle to do it in.
Well, it's beautiful and the world is so much better with you in it.
Thank you.
Um, so I want to switch gears and ask you, it's not a silly question, but switching from what we just shared. You are a single woman who does desire to have a family, but you
Yeah.
run your own business. And I know that for me, I'm a recovering workaholic and I
Yes,
could
me
work
too.
all day, every day if I didn't have other responsibilities. So how do you make time for like dating or friends or things when it's like, it's one thing when you have a screaming toddler that like you have to care for, but another
Yeah.
thing when you're like, no, this is a choice that I'm just going to decide to close the computer and go do this other thing that's important.
Yeah, that's a super good question. So for me, for a long time, like, I'm just full transparency here. I'm all about 2021 is vulnerability for me. So I love this question.
Mhm.
2019, 2020, I was like, nope, don't got time for a man, don't got time for anything else if it's not helping me grow my business, which I love, it's going to have to fall to the back. And I saw that starting to really wreak havoc on my mental health because, yeah, the money was flowing and people were coming in, my clients were happy and my team was happy, but I wasn't happy, right? There's a point where, you know, you can keep filling out your vision, but there's going to always be that missing piece. So for me, it was really setting at the beginning of 2021 specifically, right, the time and like putting boundaries around my time in my business. And a big part of that was making more hires, growing my team to take over the things that I didn't need to be doing, right? So some of the admin work, even managing my team. We have a director of operations now. I don't even manage my team directly anymore. Ironic, I have a leadership in a HR background, but my director of operations manages our team now. So it was really setting a clear intention going into really end of 2020 into 2021 that it had to be different. So that looks like, you know, working mostly Monday through Thursday, having a flexible Friday, not working on weekends, not responding to my clients on weekends. That has taken off a huge like burden from me. And I am now seeing somebody. So that is so great. And I'm just really, really happy. And we're kind of in that, like, you know, just letting it, you know, flourish and, you know, grow phase. But for me, that wouldn't have happened unless I set the intentions that A, it had to be different, and B, that I get to have it all. And there are still times where I feel like I don't get to have it all, and it can be one or the other. But I think that's something that will slowly go away. But I'm kind of wired where, you know, I'm hyper focused on one thing and everything else falls to the side. So for
Yeah.
me, it was setting intentions around my schedule and better boundaries.
You know, the boundaries thing I think is really key, because when a lot of people are talking about boundaries these days and saying no and, you know, really drawing your line in the sand, and a lot of that talk is for other people. But I think sometimes the hardest boundary to set is the one for ourselves of
Yeah.
like, I'm going to close the computer just because I need to for my mental health. Like, even if you have no other plans to do anything, it's like, I'm going to stop working so that I can just make dinner and watch TV or read a book or
Having
whatever it
Aperol
might be.
spritz.
Yes. Oh my God, girl.
That's our
Yeah.
favorite drink.
So good. So good. So yeah, I mean, I think it is really hard when it's like, I think it's for us to uphold our own like standards and boundaries and commitments to ourselves. Like for other
Mhm.
people, you know, we all have, especially as women, this inherent like, I don't want to let them down, or you know, relationships are so important, but the relationship with ourselves is so easy to just like put on the back burner.
It really is. And you can ask any one of my clients, we talk about honoring our commitments because that's what allowed me to change my business and grow my revenue, but also allowed me to start living life again was honoring my commitment. So whatever that commitment is, if that's getting to the gym, if that's eating a certain way, if that's spending time with a loved one, if that's taking walks, whatever that is, honoring your commitment first to yourself is going to allow you to be set free from everything else. So for me, we talk about it. I'm a business coach, but we talk about it all the time because it truly is what creates the change for you. So yeah, for me, it was honoring my commitments, closing the laptop, working in batches, and then just being done at the end of the day.
Love it. So you mentioned that you made this switch to high ticket group coaching, and that's when your business really, you know, took off and started skyrocketing. So why is high ticket group coaching the way to go? What makes it awesome? Like, what is it different or better? I mean, I know the answer to this because of our own training that we've done together, but I'd love for it to hear your perspective to share with the audience of, you know, what's the difference between just like a membership or an online course or even just one-on-one?
Yeah, so just like full transparency, 100% it's better, right? It's 100% better in my opinion than like when we think about at scale. Okay, I love those intimate connections with one-to-one clients. I'll take on a one-to-one client here and there. But for me, when I think about growth and scale and impact, it's 100% a better route to go to grow your business. So for me specifically, when I launched my program in December 2019, my coach had told me not to do it. She was like, and she didn't even teach it. She was like, don't do it. Like, you need to stick with one-to-one. You've only been in it doing this for like 6, 7 months. But I knew that I had more impact to create. So when I think about high ticket group coaching, the really beautiful thing about it is that there's a couple things that you get to switch, right? You get to kind of get back some of your time, right? We're always looking for more time. You get to increase your impact because you now can serve more people at still a really high level. And then lastly, like you get to build a community for a lifetime. And it's a really beautiful experience to watch happen right in front of your eyes. And you also get to grow your income, which is really, really cool. So because when you're doing one-to-one work, you're typically capped at so much, right? There's only 40 hours a week. So you can't, I mean, I don't know who would take 40 clients on at a time, 1 hour sessions a week, but some people try to. It would just be really difficult. So for me, like high ticket group coaching is absolutely the way to go. And for me, it's like when we think about impact, it's not only about going wide, but it's also going deep. So for me, I can't go deep in a $99 membership per month. I just can't. Energetically, that doesn't feel good for me. I know on the back end, I'd have to get a lot of people into that membership just to be able to cover basic expenses for the business. And I'm just not here for that. I'm not here for just barely making it or just covering it. Also, I want people to really get, I really want people to grow and I really want people to take action. So for me, I want people to pay and have them pay attention.
Yeah.
So for me, that high ticket piece allows them to have to put something on the line, because if you charge somebody $99, for most people, that's, a drop in the bucket. They're not going to really look at that. But when you're like, hey, this program is $10,000, they're going to say, wow, like I really have to show up for myself. So it's commanding that excellence from not only them, but also from you as a coach, right? You have to deliver at a really high level, but you also are going to get that, you have that expectation for your client. So for me, it's been a complete game changer and I'll never look back.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it is this like perfect medium between getting that deep connection that you get from one-on-one, but doing it in a way that's scalable for you and your business, your revenue, your time. And I have just found, even with $2,000 courses, for some people, that's still not enough to get them to actually show up and do the work and really care about getting a return on that investment. And I mean, it's true even for me, somebody who like is super driven and ambitious and loves learning new things and stuff. I have even bought courses that I don't really do, or like, I bought a course in maybe 2020, and I never opened it, never. And I see people, like we do occasionally in my own course, we'll look at our analytics and say, how many people have bought the course and never watched a video? And sometimes it's like the number is it's so much higher than it should be. And it just like, it breaks your heart a little bit, because you're just like, I wish you would show up for yourself. So I love that there is sort of this built-in accountability that you don't have to, harass them to like, come on, keep coming. Like, you got to show up. They're there doing it because they're like, damn, I just paid 10K for this, so I better do it.
Yeah, I'm getting my butt to the table and I'm going to do this work and I'm going to get the result that I want.
Right.
Because for me, it's about, I want all my clients to get results, right? Now, there are some people even paying the 5-figure price point that we do have, they still don't show up for themselves, right? And, at that point, that's, there's probably some other things that have to be worked on. Right. But for me, it's like, I want them to get the results that they came for. I want them to create the wealth. I want them to have the booming business. So it's going to cost you more than a couple pennies to get that, and right. Rightfully so. So yeah, I love it.
So I want to ask you kind of a tricky question, because even just for some of my courses that can be, I have a course at $397. I've got a course currently at $1,597. And every now and then I've gotten an email from a Black woman who has said, this is not accessible to Black people. And mm-hmm. It's been like a very conflicted, feeling when I receive an email like that. So I'm curious, as a Black woman having a high ticket program, how do you like navigate sort of the accessibility, and do you get, complaints like that from people of any color, and sort of what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I'm glad that you felt comfortable asking that. When I think about accessibility for any color, right, true accessibility, there's nothing that's truly going to be accessible. And people even say, well, for something to be accessible, it has to be free. And I used to think that too, like for it to truly be accessible, it needs to be freely available on the internet. But that even then, that's not truly accessible, because there's people that don't have access to internet. So if you think about it, there's nothing that's truly going to be accessible. For me, it's about being as accessible as possible to the people that have the problem that you solve. So for me, that looks like payment plans, or if I have a client that's like, hey, can I move my payment back a week? Like, we have policies and things set up for that. But, let's have the conversation. When we look at the net worth of Black women versus white women, or Black families versus white families, there is a mass discrepancy. I also know that there is always going to be this discrepancy. So I don't lower my prices to help a certain subset of people. I don't, because I still have a business to run. So it's not personal, but it's business. So I 100% hear that lady about it not being accessible for her, but at the end of the day, it's not accessible for her. Okay. And that's what it boils down to me in my mind. And some people may not agree, but it's not accessible for her, because we have to start changing our stories about what's like accessible or not affordable. Maybe it's just not affordable for her right now, but at the end of the day, like, it can be accessible for her if she decided that that's what she really, really wanted. And I truly believe that. And, I was listening to, it's kind of ironic, Rachel Rodgers has a new book out, We Should All Be Millionaires, and talked about how, we can, how does she word it? Like, doing thought work essentially. And we can all, we all have thoughts. Like, there are things that we can't change. Like, I can't change that, racism has been here for 400 plus years. I can't change the color of my skin. I can't change that no matter what, I earn 62 cents to the same white man's dollar. I can't necessarily like change that systemically, but what I can change for myself is to create a new story, right? And I can be angry, I can be mad. Those are all really valid feelings to have, but what am I going to use that emotion for? How am I going to channel that? Am I going to sit here and think that, well, because I'm Black, I'm going to be unable to make income or money because the system is set up against me? Or am I going to take that energy and go out and make something of myself to show other little Black girls that they can do it too, even if it's difficult? We already know it's 10 times harder to live in this skin for me. It is. And like, but I'm not going to let that hold me back from becoming a millionaire. I refuse. So my heart goes out for that woman. And I pray that she finds the right mentorship for her. But ultimately, like, it's never going to be fully accessible to anybody. So we have to run our business in a way that is inclusive, that's diverse, but also when it comes to pricing, payment plans, that makes it more accessible. So that's my 2 cents on it. I've never gotten a complaint that it's not, my pricing is not accessible to a price point. I've just heard like, well, I can't afford it. But, unfortunately, that's not really my problem. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And, to clarify and give a little more context, I get emails from people of all color. Plenty of white people also tell me I can't afford this thing. But I just found it made me kind of question, like, is this a blind spot for me of, because she positioned it in a way of like, basically this is racist. And then I'm like, well, shoot, that's not what I want to be. So but I like what you shared there. And I've heard other people speak on this too. And something that resonated with me on the subject is you have different programs and things that you offer at different levels. So like, this podcast is free. It's free information. Anybody can listen to it. You can learn a lot from it. Maybe you have a free Facebook group. Maybe you have, a blog. Maybe you have a YouTube channel, but you have something that is accessible to anybody, assuming, they have internet, like you said.
Yeah.
But, and then there's different tiers, and different people everybody's going to have a different story. But when you try to help everybody, you end up helping like almost nobody. And I think that's been a powerful lesson for me. So thank you for answering that so honestly and being open to the discussion.
You're so
I
welcome.
think it's hard because, it's uncomfortable and you don't want to offend people. And right now, especially, I think everybody is so afraid to say the wrong thing. And so I appreciate that you did make me feel comfortable to ask. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Yeah. So speaking of free Facebook groups, this is one of your main lead producing strategies, right?
It is. Yeah, that's my big free thing.
Right. Tell us, how does yours work exactly? I mean, there's so many different ways you can run it, but you really have found a way that, like I said, it is a lead producing strategy. It is not just like, I just have a group that I put a lot of heart and soul into, and who knows if it does anything for me.
Yeah, that's so funny. I had a girl yesterday say, Latisse, like, I've never seen a Facebook group where the owner is so active and giving so much for free. We do it strategically though. Like, I don't burn out and cross boundaries, but yeah, that was a cool comment that came in yesterday.
Mhm.
So when I think about our Facebook group, it's really like my little hub of like joy. It really is a place where I can fully like go in, express myself, and know most 99% of the people are there truly to learn. And if it's, my program that is a 5-figure price point isn't accessible or affordable for them right now, they are able to still get a lot of tangible and tactical things that they can go implement. So when I think about our entire funnel, because it really is a funnel, right? It's taking a customer through the journey.
Mhm.
So for us, we use two ways. We primarily grow our Facebook group now with paid advertisement. Before, we did use a lot of organic traffic from like our Instagram, YouTube, other people's Facebook groups. But I'll kind of talk about our main way. So we use an ad, like a simple ad to a landing page to get people to join our Facebook group. Like that is literally how we get more traffic. That's the first piece, because everyone's like, well, how do I grow my group? So it's at the point like you got to pay to play a little bit. So if you're ready to run some ads, that'll be a really quick way to get people in front of the content that you're already creating. The second thing is we have something, I call it like an anchor live stream. So it's like my big live topic. It's kind of like podcast, but we do a live video inside of the group. We do that every single Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific. So we kind of have a whole like setup where we notify our everybody on our email list and in our audience. So we send out emails, SMS, we do event reminders, etc. It's like the big event of the week. From there, we make a call to action every single week on that live video to apply to work with us or book a call or whatever the CTA is for the week. It's usually to apply. And then from there, we have like a whole series of follow up for our clients that are applying to work with us. And then we really like to repurpose the live video that we've created. So my marketing assistant takes our live video for the week and then works that out through content for the rest of the week. So that's why we're able to show up really powerfully in our group, because we use that anchor live stream as an anchor for all of our rest of our content for each week. From there also, so that's like our main like call to action. We just focus on growth and getting people in that have the problem that we solve. So that live stream generates, a few applications every single week. And then from there, we have our social sellers in the back end, having conversations with people that are really engaged, that are really like hot leads, people that really have questions about how they can get the result that we provide. So that's really like our funnel, and that's how we run our business. And we also do like webinars and stuff too. But yeah, I would say our Facebook group is like 60 to 70% of, where our leads come from.
That's amazing. And so are you doing this in addition to, showing up like on Instagram or running paid ads, or, do you have any other like forms of content marketing, like blogging or podcasting or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel that's been pretty dry lately, but we're getting back into that. We're about to launch a podcast, but what we have currently is we do content marketing on Instagram. So I have a decent sized following over there. So we repurpose our content from our Facebook group onto our Instagram, because I have a way bigger following on Instagram.
Mm.
So we literally just repurpose everything. So I have to show up powerfully one time a week inside of my Facebook group, and then my team just deploys and create content around that. So yeah, that's
So
really
are
like
you,
what we have.
yeah. Okay. So you have this live video once a week, and then are you saying that then you post it to Instagram after it's been published?
So we do it live. So I literally just take my phone, put it on top of my computer with the pop socket, and I go live on my Instagram at the same time. So it allows me
Okay.
to show up in both places. Yeah.
And so why do it that way instead of like, enticing people if they want to watch the videos with you every week, they have to join the Facebook group?
Yeah, so we'll get to that point, like where eventually I won't go live on both. But for me, it's kind of a missed opportunity where, we typically get, my Facebook group is about 2,500 people right now. We typically get 20 to 60 people live every single week. But I also have an audience of 13,000 right now on Instagram. So for me, and we get 20 to 30 people on live, that pop in. So for
Mhm.
me, it just would be a lost opportunity. So yeah, that's kind of why we do it, because the audience is much bigger over there. Eventually, as the group grows, we'll make it a little bit more exclusive, but I've, knock on wood, never had anyone complain about why are you going live on both when it just was in the group. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
And so how do you get people into your group then? Like, what are your kind of strategies for getting finding, cold leads and getting them to join your Facebook group?
Yeah, so we mostly run ads to get people into our group. So we just literally run a simple like video ad or stagnant ad with telling people to like, hey, join our group.
Mhm.
This is what you'll learn. And then we send them to a landing page. They opt in. And then on that thank you page, they have a button to join our group. That literally is like how we mostly get people in. What
Mhm.
we used to do is I would leverage the audience I had built on Instagram. I'd also give out like do freebies inside of other people's group for promo. And then in order to get the freebie, you had to come to the group. So that is really how we grew it organically, the first like 500 to 1,000. And then we've just been running paid ads for the last couple of months. So to
Gotcha.
get people in. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that part of your strategy inside of your funnel is social selling, which I think is it's funny. I feel like I had never heard of this term until like last fall at Mariah's conference when I heard you. And now it's like, it's everywhere.
It is. Yeah.
But for anybody who's like, what is social selling? Can you give us kind of the quick rundown of what that means?
Yeah, so it's really like this, it's not new. The term is more new than anything,
Yeah.
but I've been social selling since 2019. So basic, and that's how I grew my business. But basically social selling is like selling over social and like the DMs primarily. So having conversations that convert and less of like the traditional sales call and more of like selling in the DMs, getting people to apply, book a call, or whatever inside of the DMs. Really, the whole sales process happens in the DMs on any social platform.
Okay. So are you mostly like, I know the kind of funnel that we've learned in high ticket hybrid, and you've been doing something similar before that,
Mhm.
is more of this application funnel where you're DMing people after they apply and are accepted, and you're starting that conversation to get them to enroll in your program, answer questions, objection handle, things like that. But there's also like cold leads that you're bringing in through the DMs. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So on our Facebook group, so we have a question asking people if they want like a 10K per month action plan or whatever. We change up the question here and there, but we've been doing that for a while now.
Mhm.
And we also collect their email. But that question, we have it sorted in our database. So our social sellers go in every single day, and anybody that's joined the group in the last day that says yes, they want to be DM'd, we start a conversation with them. And the goal is to get them to apply to work with us. So yeah, it's always going in the back end.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you do once you find a cold lead? Like, how do you initiate that relationship? Are you DMing right away? You start commenting on their stuff first, or like, what's kind of your process?
Yeah, so it's always really good to give engagement because you want people to feel seen. All right. We want people to feel safe, seen, and heard. Like that's that's at the core of everything that we do. So for us, like we DM people that have raised their hand first. Eventually, like people that have been in the group that are really highly engaged, we have a second process for that. But people that say yes, like send me an action plan, I want to chit chat, blah blah blah, we will send a DM. So we'll go give them a little bit of love. We'll like a couple of their pictures, comment a little bit. And it's really genuine. It's not like love this, like that's so fake. It's pretty genuine. And my social sellers know to keep it really genuine. And then from there, we'll just, we'll kind of start off pretty standard because we want them to know why we're sending them a message. I'm about like being direct and not sugarcoating. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to say, hey girl, how are you? Like we don't do that. We always leverage people's names, right? We want to address people properly, but we always say like, hey, welcome to our Elevated Women's Entrepreneurs group. We're so excited that you're here. On your entry questions, you said that you wanted your 10K action plan. My name is Maddie from Leticia's team. Are you so interested in getting an action plan and chit chatting here in the DMs? And then like 99% of the time they say yes, absolutely. And then we have a whole sequence of how we kind of navigate that conversation to get them to apply to work with us. But we do actually help them. It's not like our only agenda is to get them to apply. That's what separates us. We actually like help people in the DMs. It's not just about selling our products. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the process.
Okay. So one thing you mentioned is like that you have a social seller who will say, hey, it's Maddie from Leticia's team. So I've
Yes.
seen this done many different ways. I'd love to chat with you kind of pros and cons of each, maybe of whether it's you as the entrepreneur and the business owner actually being the one in there and having the conversations. It's somebody on your team pretending to be you, or it's somebody on your team saying, hey, I'm on Kate's team. And like, what do you find? I mean, obviously, I think I know what you find the best, but what do you feel
Yeah.
are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, so for a while it was just me, like the first year in business, like it was literally like up until like mid 2020, it was me. And so there was no issues. But as we grew, like my thing is we did have originally our team members like quote unquote pretending to be me, but that just started to feel inauthentic.
Mhm.
And when we think about growth, I don't want any of my clients thinking that Latisse is available 24/7. So why would I act that way in the DMs?
Mhm.
So that was the first key thing. The second thing, well, also being it felt a little bit inauthentic. But the second thing too is like I want a degree of separation. So if there is a mistake made in the DMs, I don't want people being like, and not this is not an ego thing. This is just so I can train my team thing. I don't like, and sometimes conversations can get blurred. So I want to know, like, was it really me or was it really my team member? Because we do talk to so many people all day long. So for me, and especially when you start to have multiple social sellers, like you need to be able to separate that and
Yeah.
also hold them accountable. So it's having that degree of separation. So I know, hey, if so and so said something way off, I can go coach them for performance and have that conversation. So it just creates that degree of separation. And then if somebody's upset, then I can step in and say, hey, it's Latisse, like I'm taking over, or my director of ops or something like that. So that's why we've since switched over in the last like 6 months to, hey, it's so and so from Latisse's team. And no one's had an issue because they're fully trained by me. So yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is if you feel like, we worked with a social selling agency for a little bit, and one of the things they said is, well, if we say, hey, it's Latisse from Kate's team, then they don't really want to talk to Latisse from Kate's team. They want to talk to Kate. And so you have not found that to be the case?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Everybody love like they're like, oh my, because it's kind of crazy. People are like, Latisse is like a little celebrity, which I'm like, please don't call me that. But I've had people be like, oh my gosh, like, hey Matt, like one of my social sellers, her name is Maddie. They're like, oh my gosh, hey Maddie, like I just love Latisse. Like I'm so excited you sent me a message.
Mhm.
I also do a lot of content. So I don't want people thinking I'm available all the time. I want them to see what's possible, that you don't have to do this by yourself because I teach how to create high-end group coaching programs. So I don't want them thinking to scale, they have to be doing this 24/7 when their team can support them. So I've not once had anybody say, well, it'd be nice to talk to Latisse. I will hop in and voice note and say, hey, like saw the message in the inbox, just wanted to say, hey, I know you and Maddie are chit-chatting, but I wanted to know, I saw your application too, loved it, whatever, whatever, whatever. So for me, I've not found any issues, and I've been social selling for, going on 3 years, and I've never had an issue as we transition. So for me, it's worked really well.
Yeah. It just feels so much more in integrity too, to, be totally transparent and clear. And then there's things, sometimes we have had somebody like either they didn't tell the person that it wasn't me, but they didn't also like necessarily try to pretend like they were me. They was just sort of like, I just answered the question, but maybe they didn't answer it right, or it's something like, God, I never would have said that, or they didn't know that I was having a separate conversation with them over an email or in the Facebook group or something. And so then it feels like there's this disconnect, and then it makes you look bad.
Exactly. That's why
Yeah,
we don't do it that way.
right. Yeah, I
So
totally hear that. So if you're listening thinking, yeah, the social selling sounds really cool, I would love to outsource this. How do you find? I know we have this conversation all the time in our Voxer thread with
yeah.
other HTH members, but do you prefer paying social sellers a flat salary or a flat fee if they're not a full-time employee? Or do you like paying like a little bit smaller of a fee and with a commission per sale, or strictly commission? What have you found to be most successful?
Yeah, so since our social sellers also generate applications, we do pay them a base salary, like a base like hourly rate plus commission, and it's a pretty good deal. So we do find because they're putting in work to generate applications. So for us, it makes sense to pay them both. Now you can kind of get away with like if you're at a spot where you have like a funnel where you have warm leads and you're closing directly in the DM and you have a process, you can get away with paying them only commission because it's similar to like if you had a high ticket closer on a sales call, you typically pay high ticket closers 100% commission. So you can absolutely do that. I find that I don't ever want our integrity jeopardized. So for me, it's important that we give a base. So my people are taken care of, but also they know like we have tiered commissions, and that's how we incentivize our team. So if you close 5 people this month, you get this amount. et cetera, et cetera. So that works really well for us. I find that doing commission only, you can kind of get into some murky waters because people will kind of just do whatever. Not, and this, most people won't do this, but you'll have those bad apples that might just do whatever to get the sale. And that may not be the best for your business. So, because
Yeah.
you don't want somebody 3 months later being like, I want a refund, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So
or using, marketing tactics that don't feel in alignment with you. There's a lot of like bro marketing and using that like really high pressure sales
yeah.
tactics and manipulation and kind of psychological just destructive things that are like, this isn't best for, because I think ultimately people like you and me, and most people listening, I assume, are like, I want people who this really is right for, who I know I can get a result for, who they're really excited. I don't want to have to drag someone kicking and screaming into my program.
Exactly. So, especially because you're not necessarily going to be talking to them. So, obviously, you're going to hire the right people, hopefully, from the start. But I mean, when money's involved, you have to look at it from a risk standpoint. I always look at things from risk. And for me, I'm not willing to take that risk and only do commissions.
Yeah.
So, I find the happy medium.
And so when you have that happy medium, is their base, like a livable wage, or is it sort of like, restaurant workers where it's like, no, you couldn't live on $2 an hour, but you get enough in tips to, or something.
Yeah, no, the base is pretty good. It's typically it's $15 to $20 an hour for the base salary plus a really good commission. So they're not full time. If they were full time, it would look a little bit different. But my social sellers currently are part time and they have other businesses and jobs. So we find that plus commission. I mean, our social sellers are making a few thousand a month. So part time. So yeah,
that's awesome. Awesome. Let's see. What are some of the most common objections you get in the DMs?
Oh, the number one is like, I can't afford it. Like, there's always other objections, but those are easy. It's the money objection that comes up because we're selling high ticket. So that's usually the number one.
And it is true. If you're selling high ticket, that's obviously going to be a number one objection. But even for courses that are my $397 course, that's our number one objection. I can't afford it. Even for our $39, kind of like low ticket, just SLO, I can't afford it.
Really?
Yeah, we have gotten people who are like, I can't afford it. Can't you just give it to me? So money is always, and I say this because I think a lot of people hear this and think, oh, so I should lower my price. And it's like, you are always going to find people who can't afford it, no matter what your price is. And you're always going to find people who can afford it. And you just have to find the right people for your thing. But that being said, getting the objection of I can't afford it, what's your first line of, I was going to say line of defense. That's not the right phrase. What do you say first if somebody just says, especially if they're just very point blank, like I get a lot of just like, your program looks amazing, I would love to do it, I just can't afford it.
Yeah. So the first thing that I like to do is validate that because I want them to know that they're safe, seen, and heard in the conversation. So for me, it's about validating and letting them know I hear you, I've been there, and I know that this is also something that you really want because you showed up for this and you're here. So let's talk about it. I think sometimes in handling objections, we try to gloss over and ask questions that aren't actually relevant to the objection. And a lot of times I find 70% of the time when people say they can't afford it, it's not that they can't afford it. It's that they're really scared and they're really fearful that they A, can't get the result, or B, that they believe that maybe this isn't the right program for them. So it's trying to figure out, I call it like, there's actually 3 levels. It's like the three levels. I call it three levels deep. So it's really trying to figure out, making sure that, is it the right program for them? Do they believe themselves, or do they believe that you are who you say you are? So it's really navigating through those 3 things first, because it's usually not the actual money. Now, sometimes it absolutely is. The money's just not in the bank account, and that's on that. You can't force anybody to come up with the money. Right. But I really like to kind of dig deep to ask them, like, so money aside, would you is this program still the perfect fit for you? And if they say yes, great. It's probably that they don't believe in themselves. So now we have to ask a different set of questions. But if they say, I'm still on the fence, I don't know if this program is going to work for me, then you can be very direct. Like, what about this program is unclear to you, or where do you need more clarity? And that's where you can kind of dig in there. So that's kind of, there's so many different levels to handling objections, but usually when it comes to money, it's one of those 3, like, they're fearful, they don't believe in themselves, they don't believe this is the right program, or they don't believe who you are, that you say who you are. So it's usually not the third one. I've never really had that, but it's usually one of the first two. So
Yeah, they just don't. Yeah. That's really helpful. And I think the same thing, because it's like, if they truly believe that they could get the result from the program, if, let's just say one of the things you're promising is that you could start making $20,000 a month with using my strategies,
yeah,
and your program costs 10,000. So if you knew you could spend 10,000 to make 20,000, spend 10,000 once to make 20,000 from month after month after month, and hopefully even more, who wouldn't take that deal?
right.
So it's like they don't actually believe that it's possible. So when that becomes clear that that's what their objection really means, how do you show them that it is possible to get
Yeah.
them to
So
believe in themselves?
yeah, so I think a big way to show them is, like, I'm a visual person, so I like to use visual. So showing them testimony, showing them case studies, screenshots of like what's happened. Like, one of our new clients actually, like, is a career coach, and she just was like, I haven't seen any career coaches charging high ticket. I'm just really nervous. She really didn't know if it would work for her. So we really shared another story of another career coach inside of our business who hit six figures in her first 12 months working with us. So and that was really powerful for her and set her over the edge. That's a really big way. The second way is really just painting the picture for them, because sometimes they're like, I don't know if I'll have the time to make it happen. I don't have maybe the supportive partner. So, like, again, it's usually not the money. It's about, like, can I actually do this for myself? So
Mhm.
sitting with them and actually mapping out, okay, so Monday through Friday, you have a 9 to 5. Now we're going to map out, like, here are the hours that you're going to work in your business, and putting in these hours and looking at the data, right? This is what's possible for you, and just really holding their hand through it. So often we just want to gloss over, like, the real objection, which is like all the things that we just talked about. So we really like to tell stories and paint a picture and show them what's possible, in the DMs and voice note back and forth, and just really create that human touch. And that really usually wins them over. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how we like to do it.
Now, I've heard some people talk about how objection handling in and of itself can be controversial, even that it's
Mm.
like, I mean, I think at worst, people feel like you're manipulating people into joining your programs or something. How do you kind of walk that line of like knowing when it's appropriate to like coach them and help them get to a conclusion, whether it's to join or not, versus, do kind of using that more manipulative or, like psychological trickery to like all of a sudden they've done something and then the next day they're like, shit, I didn't actually want to do that.
Yeah, buyer's remorse can be common, but what I say, there's a couple of things. I have so many thoughts on this, but a lot of people use like NLP and things like that when they know what they're doing and they're trying to manipulate. So I'm not going to talk about those people. I don't even know NLP, so I don't do that, and none of my team does, and the people I associate with don't. So, but when I think about like the line, I like to kind of use like the three like touch rule. So for me, it's like, well, try to handle the objection 3 times. After that, we're done, because for me, that feels really comfortable. And I think about even back to my corporate days, we would coach somebody for performance 3 times before they would be like let go or fired or whatever. So for me, 3 is like a really good safe number. Now, when I think about adults, I think that and there's so many different ways for before somebody's going to buy, or at least in my business, right? So they are going to go through a presentation and watch it and find out the investment. They're going to go to a checkout page and look at the investment. They're going to check a box for terms and conditions. They're also going to get a contract to sign. There's going to be so many different ways where they're going to be able to self-regulate every step of the way. So personally, I don't think you could, in my opinion, if you're doing it from a place of like truly just answering their questions, because that's, in my opinion, all what objections are, that you can't really manipulate anybody into doing something, right? You can't manipulate anybody into buying a house or signing a contract to buy a car. So for me, when I think about high ticket sales, it's about, are you in alignment with the vision that you have for yourself? And if so, you're doing the work that you need to do. Now, if they have questions, answer their questions. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they can't answer people's questions because of the fear of like, you might force them to do anything. You can't force them to sign a contract or click a button or put in their credit card information. So I think it's about kind of rechanging that and like looking at, hey, I'm just answering their questions inside of this conversation. So that's my thoughts on it, really. So
Yeah. And just for clarity, you mentioned NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, for anybody who's
yes.
like, what's NLP?
Yes.
And it's a very like approach using kind of psychological techniques and
Yeah.
like I said, sort of this like brain trickery in some ways, which in other circumstances can be
It's
incredibly
great.
powerful, like hypnosis and anyway.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give that context. Um, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if your intentions are, in integrity, we're dealing with adults who are perfectly capable of self-regulating and making up their own minds about something. And as long as you're, acting in integrity, and just, my dad always says objections are just requests for more information.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so it's just sharing and trying to help. And I think the thing is, at the end of the day, and I'm sure you do this too, there are some people that after talking with them, I'm like, you're not right for this. I
Exactly.
am encouraging you not to join. And if you
Yeah.
know that you would get to that point if it felt like that was right for them, then I feel like you're not ever going to really run the risk of manipulating somebody into making a decision that's not right for them.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, if somebody wants to just stop talking to you, they can, like, if you're on the phone, they can hang up or they can stop responding or whatever. So it kind of goes both ways. And, it's just being in integrity always. That's one of our core values. So, just check yourself. And if it feels like you probably is, so stop. But usually, from there, you're going to be good to go. So
Yeah. And it's finding that balance, if sometimes I'll get a DM and it's like, oh, I can't afford it. You don't want to just go, oh, okay, thanks anyway, and then move on. It's like, wait. There could have
yeah.
been, there's so
Like,
much
what
more
can't
to
you
that.
afford? Like, can you
Right.
not afford the pay in full, the payment plan? Like, let's talk about it, and just having that open line of communication.
Yeah.
So yeah, just talk to people, humanize it, and it's going to be all good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Latisse, thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, Kate, it's been so fun. Thank you for having me. Y'all can find me hanging out over on Instagram at Latisse Hudson, and then also my free group, Elevated Women Entrepreneurs, on Facebook.
I love it. So do you have like 2 more minutes to do our lightning round at the end?
I do, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we ask everybody these questions at the end. So we'll go quick. What's your favorite way to make time for self-care?
My favorite way to make time for self-care, like what I like to do, I
Yeah.
like to get massages and facials.
Me too. What is one tool or strategy that you use to help with time management?
Google Calendar.
I love so many people end up just saying like their calendar, which seems like such like a simple answer, but enough people have said it that I'm like, there's something to this whole calendar thing.
It's like I live by it now. I
Yeah.
used to not, but I do now.
What's one of the most powerful business or mindset entrepreneurial books you've read?
You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
That was so good. So
Yes.
good. Do you have a quote or mantra or affirmation you're telling yourself lately?
Yeah. Mine is like, I refuse for business to be hard. So that's kind of
Mm,
what I've been telling myself. And we're making some big shifts. And I'm really excited to get some more time back and take more vacations.
writing that one down. I refuse for business to be hard. Oh, so good. Okay, last question. The podcast is called Success with Soul. What does Success with Soul mean to you?
Success with soul means to me living out my vision in whatever way I see fit and possible for myself. And I think about oftentimes, like when I think about the soul inside of me, that's just being bold and speaking my truth. And sometimes it's not easy for people to hear, and sometimes it's not even easy for me to hear. But I think success with soul ultimately boils down to me just speaking and living my truth every single day and being an unapologetic Black woman doing it. So that's what it means to me.
I love it. Thanks, Latisse.
Thanks, Kate.